I want to start off with Colossians, the verse that I just keep going back to as where we're going. And I'll read it again. I just like hearing it, and I think it's something that we can keep focusing us back to where we're really going. And so Colossians 3:12 through 14. So as those who have been chosen of God, holy and beloved, put on a heart of compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience, bearing with one another and forgiving each other. Whoever has a complaint against anyone, just as the Lord forgave you, so also should you. Beyond all these things, put on love, which is the perfect bond of unity. And there's just so much in there to me. The bearing with one another, the compassion, the kindness, the gentleness is so contrary to what we have learned growing up and what we typically do when we're hurt and we're angry. And then forgiving each other. We need to be continually moving towards God to give us the grace to actually move with compassion, His compassion. And so, like I said, I know I say this probably every week, but I just can't think of anything more important than really letting God get in the middle of all this instead of us defending ourselves or protecting ourselves or attacking. I kind of wanted to go over a little bit. It was the homework assignment. I think I want to come back to for those of you that looked at it or took a chance to do it, I want to get some feedback on that in a little while. But I want to go back through this. This is a real important piece to conflict resolution and to communication skills. If we can't, when things happen, pull away and get alone and go, okay, what is going on in me? Then all of our focus is on what is wrong with the other person. And there's probably plenty wrong with them and plenty wrong with us. And so all we can really work on is us. And so that's why, whether we go over it in class and here, I really want you doing this exercise all the time. I mean, just so that you will get into the habit of going, God, reveal to me what is going on. What is my sin in this? What is am I selfish? Am I scared? Am I self-protecting? So that we get familiar with ourselves. And then as we start moving through that process that I've shown you guys the picture of, the self-awareness piece, to me, is probably the most, I hate to say difficult, because it's not that it's so hard, it's just so important otherwise you just move on to discussing it, and you move on to, well, I thought you did this, and I thought you did this, and this is why I'm so mad. If we go there, we're doing a mental battle, and it's never going to, I won't say never, it just doesn't usually work out real well, because I see life different than you do. And so my perspective is different than yours, and you're trying to convince me to see it the way you see it, and I'm trying to convince you to see it the way I see it. And what I want us to move towards is a much deeper communication style, which is from my heart, this is what's going on, and this is how I feel, and then to move towards compassion, not argue the facts. We're brought up learning how to win arguments and wanting to win arguments, and if I can win, then maybe you'll see that I'm right this time. And our marriages get hacked on all the time by winners and losers. The loser lost. I mean, your marriage lost. So I mean, I want a good argument. To me, is one where everyone is heard and everyone is considered. And I, even if I'm angry with my wife, or if she's angry with me, if there's a point that I can go, I wonder what she's going through. I wonder what it's like to be in her shoes with her. We've talked about genogram and timelines. Knowing all of that, this is just kind of, if she's frustrated or angry, and she's not normally frustrated and angry, so I wonder what she's going through. Instead of, who cares what the other person's going through? This is really about me, and I've been hurt, and I have rights, and I want to argue my rights, and I want to win, and I want an apology, and I want, that kind of a dynamic. And that's just junk. It doesn't lead to coupleness. It leads to winning, and winning works great when you're in high school, and it doesn't work real great in a marriage. So I want us to get into this, and I just want to go briefly over this for those of you that weren't here. So we've got primary emotions, and we're going to get more into that today. I really want to get to the place, because if we don't understand what we're thinking and feeling and what our beliefs are, we're not going to get this. We're not going to be able to move in the most mature way that we can, understanding the most what's going on inside of us. So we've got situations, thoughts, emotions, beliefs, and actions. I've told you all that these are out of order, and they're out of order on purpose. That when we really, and I do it this way so that when I'm working with a client, when we get to beliefs, after they've kind of exhausted and separated thoughts from emotions, the belief is more easily found. And then if I really had this right, belief would be over the whole, the whole thing would just be belief, because our belief taints everything that we see. So if I believe I'm worthless, then I go into situations hearing things through that grid of worthlessness. Or if I'm inadequate, or if I feel shame, then we will begin to hear things through that grid. I know I've talked about that. Does that make pretty good sense? Okay, but again, I'll leave it in this way because I think it's easier. I used to put it first, and people have no clue what their belief is. I just know I'm hurt, and so they need to kind of work through the situation. So I'll leave it like this, but just understand that if the belief is, if I've just done something amazing in life, I think is amazing, I'm confident, I feel like I'm on top of the world, you can tell me just about anything and it's just not going to knock me down because I'm confident, I feel good I feel adequate, I feel significant, I feel important. But if I have just failed a test, or if I have just lost a loved one, or if I've just been fired from my job and I feel like a loser and inadequate and insignificant and my value is at an all-time low, most things that people say, I'm going to hear, that's the last thing I want to hear. I'll hear through that grid. Does that make sense? So the belief beginning, and that's our responsibility, is to really wrestle with God on this belief. Do I believe what I believe that was generated from my genogram and my hurts loss timeline? Or do I believe the truth of God? Who's my audience? People, my partner, or God? God sees me as perfect and blameless. Blows my mind, but I'm extremely grateful for that. How do I see my wife through those eyes? How do I forgive like Christ forgives me every day? So that's, again, where we're going. But this situation chart helps me and helps other people at least break down what's going on so that when we get alone, I may give you a glimpse of the longer version, not to overwhelm you, but just to say, if you get this down, then the rest of it gets easier. Or maybe even a better way to say it is the rest of it's pretty difficult too. And if all of this has hit at you at one time, it's just hard. But it's so important to me to go through the blame parts and the what from my past is affecting this. So that's why I say do this. I would do this as often as you can, to where this just becomes automatic. I'm angry with you. What's going on inside of me? I'm angry with you. I'm hurt. What's going on inside of me? Again, it doesn't release the other person from any harm. It's not like it's always my fault if I'm hurt, sad, angry, or whatever, but I need to know what's mine. And then the heart change would be another area, but this is a little bit more, I don't know, important to me. So again, beliefs, insignificant, unappreciated. There's other beliefs, and we'll get into that later. I mean, there's godly beliefs, that I'm cherished, that I'm loved, that I'm forgiven, that I'm seen as blameless. Those are other beliefs that we can use. This is just where most people can identify. This is what our flesh is doing when things are going on. So I wanted to kind of hone in a little bit more on the emotional part of this, because I think the emotional part is probably the most difficult for us to understand. So let me try to explain. Emotions are different between men and women. Women are much more apt to talk about their emotions. They're much more apt to call and say, I'm sad, or I'm lonely. Or when I have couples all the time where the woman wants to talk about relationships and how do you feel, and the guy goes, hungry, scared, those kind of things that's what, and I've gone over some of this, but men and women have different emotions and they express them very differently. I want to bring in a video sometime. I tried to bring the monk video. I can't find it. It's the one that shows the grief cycle that goes so fast. I sent it off to one of my professors, and I want it back now, but I can't find it. But anyway, but there's a video of, I like the movie Message in a Bottle. And it's Kevin Costner and Robin Wright Penn or whatever, and there's a scene in there where his wife died. The family wants all her paintings and junk, and he's won't give it to him because he's kind of built a shrine for his wife who's died. And then he has a fist fight in the restaurant with the brother of his wife that died, and so there's this big standoff between the families, and he actually gets to a place where he takes the paintings over to their house and they weren't there, or maybe they looked out the window, I can't remember. And so nothing was ever said. He dropped them off. He got to a place where he was a little stronger, and then he was inside. He was building a big wooden boat. It's a gorgeous boat, and he's just sanding. I mean, it's like this, 25-year, it looked like a Noah kind of thing, only a lot smaller. But he's in there sanding, and the brother walks in and picks up sandpaper, and on the other end of the room, on the other end of the boat, and starts sanding. And they just look at each other, and then they go back to work. And that's a man language. I know that's, for women, that's a very difficult thing to understand, but that's men saying, I'm sorry, I forgive you. Now, that's not good enough for relationships with women. I understand that, but I'm just saying that's where we come from. That is really exposing ourselves by glancing over and going back to work. That's about as deep as some of us can go. So just understand that's where a lot of us come from. That women seem more emotional than men, but it's really not true. Men are just bottling up emotions, or they're holding them in, or they're not. Well, I'll get to it in a minute. Women usually are able to express their emotions. Y'all's language of emotion is something that's been developed throughout your life. I've heard explanations as to why, but I don't think it matters. We are where we are. Who cares why? We need to move forward. And they're just theories, and so they may or may not happen. But men have a lot of emotions, and I think most men come in when I'm doing counseling, and I'll start saying, I have a sheet on the floor that has these primary emotions that are on these things that I've shown y'all. And I go, what? And so what do you? They'll be really upset, and I go, what are you feeling? Well, the obvious answer is anger. Everybody says anger first, and that anger is not really, mad is not the one that the feeling is. So I go, okay, what's behind the anger? Then they don't know. They just don't understand. And if I say, is there any shame? No, I don't do shame. I'm not shameful. I'm not. It's Rambo shows up. I don't do shame. That kind of thing. And then I go, is there any fear? No fear. Don't do fear. And so the men are not. They're not either able to express their emotion, they're not willing to express their emotion, or they're not allowed to express their emotion. And that's, to me, the most powerful one. They're not allowed. In their brain, they're not allowed. Growing up, they weren't allowed. So the voice of a father, alive or dead, is still in the back of their minds. Most men, many men, boy, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, wipe that tear off your eye, be a man. They're 6, be a man. I'm 6. That's so the men are struggling with, if I talk about my emotions, I've just breached the whole family law of men don't share emotions. But yet there's so much going on inside that they can't identify. It's not like, I don't want to talk about my fear, my shame. And, we don't have the language of emotion like a woman does. Now, that's not y'all's problem, but it becomes your problem, women, because men, and it becomes your problem, men, because we need to learn not how to talk like a Hallmark card of, oh, darling, I'm so afraid and shameful today. I don't expect that, but we need to come to some conclusion of understanding what really is going on if we're going to have conversations that are meaningful in our relationships. Does that make any sense? Any questions about that, or any comments just on how that affects your relationship, whether it's you as a man or you in a relationship or you as a woman? What does this stir up in you? I think that's interesting, because the dynamic of a woman asking a man questions that he doesn't know the answer to, most men go to a place of shame. So here comes a wife that's pursuing. Y'all have heard me talk about pursuing and withdrawing dynamics. So the woman's pursuing, which is not the bad guy. That's the person trying to fix the problem in the relationship. Okay, the way women pursue sometimes is good and sometimes is not so good. So the woman is pursuing. The man actually kind of floods out, it's like a blank stare of, I have no idea what I feel. And so the woman is kind of seen as being in control. I'm trying to get this out of you. And the man is out of control. And how do you feel when you're out of control? You've got to find some way to regain some control. It's too uncomfortable just to fall backwards and no one's behind you to pick. It's kind of that feeling. But then the man gains control by shutting it down. So we go from out of control to back in control. So the dynamic, the woman is pursuing, trying to get answers, or trying to get the man to feel, trying to fix the relationship, and the man shuts down like a turtle, and it's kind of over at that point, or rages, and it's kind of over at that point. Does that make sense? Well, usually a guy or an internal processor, again, that immediate flooding of, it's like a fear of reaction. We need to get alone. I do. I need to get alone and process. And so Teresa and I have worked through that dance enough to where she knows I need that time, because otherwise I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just going to defend myself, and it's not real pretty. So she's wonderful at saying, go process, and then I'm good at coming back and talking about it. She's good. Sometimes she needs to process. She's good at coming back and talking about it. But that's the key to it. But the external processor doesn't understand why you don't know right now, because I do. And the guy's going, yeah, that's about all we think. It's just fear. Yes. Yeah, I think that's and I'm glad you said that, because it's not gender. It's just, mostly it's men, but I'd say maybe 10 or 20 or 30% are women, and it doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It just means you do it different than the norm, but it doesn't make you abnormal, like a weird abnormal. It's just outside of the norm. But it's just as healthy as the opposite being there. That's great. In fact, I've got a book I want to also recommend if you're readers. Is a book called The Voice of the Heart by Chip Dodd. And that's what he does. He is the guru of what's going on emotionally. And this is not just so that men can understand what they're feeling. I can't even tell you, I haven't read the book in a couple of years, but it's much more how we grow up, and we've got all this energy, and we've got all these feelings, and then one by one we get hurt or disappointed, and then it's like putting one arm behind your back. So one feeling gets kind of snuffed. I don't think I'll look excited about that again. That was too disappointing. That was too hurtful to be that disappointed. So one by one, our feelings that we need to be expressing, that used to be safe when you're 4 or 6 or whatever, hopefully, and maybe not for some people, but as it becomes unsafe, we start shutting them down. Men do it differently. I wouldn't say better or worse. I just would say that. So the voice of the heart is really much more about, here's what's going on, and here's how to get your emotional life back, because it's your vibrance, it is your life, and you don't want to be stunted in that way. There's a lot more of you to come out. And it's a phenomenal book, and it's not a real thick book. It's an easy read, and I think he really knows what he's talking about. So I would highly recommend that. And then, of course, the one that she just mentioned, Search for Significance by Robert McGee. I just can't say enough great things about it. I use it every day in counseling. So what I want to do is I talked to you guys last. Would someone come get this and pass these around, please? Thank you, George. I talked to you last week about how feelings they have a good side and a bad. We look at the feelings chart of those 8 feelings, and we go, well, there's one good one, gladness, and there's 7 bad ones, hurt, fear, shame, guilt, all that stuff. And I won't say that's not true. That's a little too harsh, but all feelings have a good side and a bad side. And so understanding this, and this was done by someone else. I did a little modification to it, so I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but you can take it with you and study it. What I want to try to show is just an example of what's going on. Understanding that thank you very much, George. Feelings lead to action. Okay, so going back to situation, thoughts, feelings, beliefs, action. Again, belief kind of goes before all of it. So situations you can't really help. They're just going to happen, okay? Your thoughts, your automatic thoughts are instantaneous. I mean, they're instantaneous. So you're not going to be able to go, gee, like I said last time, I wonder what I'll think about this. I think I'll think good thoughts. I think I'll, go through this exercise check. It doesn't happen that way. This is milliseconds of stuff. The feelings are going to follow the thoughts. Okay, or some people say thoughts follow the feelings. Again, I don't care. This works for me, and it seems to work for others. And then the actions, you can change your actions. But so to focus on changing situations is but people change situations all the time. They just avoid situations where hurt can happen. Now, sometimes that's healthy. If you're going to the zoo, stay out of the lion den. I mean, I'd go ahead and stay on this side of the fence. Or if you're around people that are abusive, staying away from abusive people, is a healthy move. But in general, if we're avoiding situations so that we don't feel and think these thoughts so that these actions don't come out, sometimes that's not so healthy. But I don't want to focus on that as much as I really want to go to the feelings and help us understand more where they go. Let's take hurt for an example. Hurt, the impairment of hurt, I don't know if you can see that. Can you see that all right? My fonts are kind of shrinking. I think that's my eyes that are failing. Hurt can lead to resentment, or hurt can lead to where you can actually name what's wounded about you and begin the healing process. So you've got the impairment of hurt, and you've got you can either go to, remember I talked, for those of you that were here last week, you can either go, let's say shame, for example. I can either spiral down. What a fine man. Isn't this? Thank you. Oh, my healer. Let's see if it's working. Well, it looks, yes, it is. Thank you. Okay, you do get a gold star today. The rest of y'all, so hurt can have an impairment. You can move towards resentment, hatred. Hurt can lead down this spiral of, you know what resentment can do? It can literally change your life in a real negative way. It can lower your immune system. It can do all kinds of things. It can lead to depression. Depending on what you do with hurt, you can either spiral down the impairment side of any feeling, or you can move towards the benefit side, and you get to choose. It's not an easy choice. I wouldn't go, it's like a multiple choice thing doesn't come up and you go, I think I'll pick the impairment. But we have to try harder, some harder than others, to choose how we're going to take a hurt. Does that make sense? And then all of these feelings, then we go to God and we go, Lord, I hurt. That's this naming the woundedness. To me, it's important to understand. That's why I say, guys and ladies, it's important to understand what we're feeling, number one, so that we can move in a healthier way than we usually move or used to move. And then we can move to God and say, Lord, I'm hurt. But if I'm just angry and don't know what I'm feeling, it's not that God can't still heal me. He knows what I'm feeling. It just increases, to me, the quality of my prayer life, and that I can go, Lord, I am hurt. I don't know, instead of just going, okay, I'm not hurt. I'm a man. I'm not supposed to do that. But if you could fix my wife before I go back out and talk, to appreciate that. It enriches my prayer life where I can begin to name what I'm feeling and go for healing from the one who is the great healer, who's God himself. So again, hurt comes up. You can go into resentment. That's kind of the first. That's where I would say the impairment column really is the flesh. And I would say the benefit column leads to following the Spirit and moving towards the Lord. So we get to kind of veer off if we want to. Another one is sadness. Sadness can be self-pity. I'm just poor, pitiful. I'll just stay home tonight and not do anything. And they're just doing it without, we can go to self-pity and wallow, and then that's going to spiral down into all different kind of places. Or we can take sadness and we can understand what the value was of the thing that we're sad about. I'm really sad that that this person hurt me, or that this person died in my life, or that we moved, or this pet was taken away from me, or whatever happened. And it allows us to begin to kind of give it honor, not in a let me glorify it. It's not that. It's just we have a tendency to stuff these things. We get sad and we're like, well, I'm moving on. I can pull myself up by my bootstraps and I'll get over this as quickly as I can, as opposed to going to God with this and saying, I'm hurt. I'm sad. Lord, you have borne my sin on the cross. Please heal this part of my life. He's not going to, I don't think he's a zapper kind of God. He's not going to go, that's sad, but it's a process of now leaning towards the cross and leaning towards a living God that wants a relationship with you, as opposed to you solving your own problem by self-pity, which solves absolutely nothing. Does that make sense? Does this make some sense? Let's take loneliness, for example. Loneliness can turn to apathy. I don't care. They don't care about me. I don't care. We can go into that spiral, or we can go to the benefit, which allows us to ask for help. I'm lonely, or to reach out for relationships instead of just going, well, I'm alone. I'm a loser. I'm nothing. Nobody likes me. Nobody's going to like me. We can, Lord, give me the courage to go try again, to expose myself to risk being rejected again. Instead of, Lord, protect me from rejection, it's, Lord, walk with me through this so that when I am rejected, that I know that you don't reject me. Help me to turn to you in this, not begin avoiding all situations that could have some rejection to it. Then we all of a sudden start pulling away and isolating, and that's not where you want to go. I want you to protect yourself. I don't want you to isolate and turn into a hermit that's out in the, like I ended up out in a log cabin out in the woods and was very happy there for a long time when I was really struggling with depression. It was very safe. No one knew how to get out there. Now I actually really enjoy building relationships and being in relationship, but back then it was much more isolation and avoidance. So don't do what I did. Okay, so fear, let's take fear. I'll kind of run through these. Fear can lead to anxiety or rage, or fear can help us practice and prepare, and I would even say protect, I think is on your list. In other words, if you, and I mean this literally, but if you're in an unsafe place, fear can cause you to go, you know what, I can do better. I think if I'm in the jungle and I hear the big roar of a lion, fear just became my best friend. I am now going to get inside of a building or get inside of the car and I'm going to protect myself. Or if we're in the wrong part of town and I hear gunshots, fear is my friend. So fear really is a very beneficial thing, but fear that leads to anxiety or rage, or fear that leads to reclusion or moving away or isolation again, then the fear is owning us, not moving towards God to give us healing or freedom or whatever in this case. Any questions? I know I'm kind of going through this quickly. How is this striking you? Yes? Yeah, and I think that's great, but I think women are probably going to fear more for their children as the mother, which is your gift from. I mean, God gifts y'all to mother your children. So the mama bear syndrome, you don't hear daddy bear syndrome. I mean, I've never heard of that. I mean, dads want to protect their children, but the mother is I would say usually the more protective one in the family. So not, we'll get into other things later that would talk about how does that become, you know, a real important thing to do, but yet not an idol of I must now protect them and then begin to snuff them out so that they never get hurt. And then we can find ourselves making sure our kids never hurt or never sad or never lonely or never fear, and they're emotionally behind everybody else because they don't know how to do this. Then they graduate from high school and move off to college and they don't know how to deal with disappointment and hurt. So you're right, there's a balance there of when's enough and when's over the line. And I would say it's a difficult line. It moves a lot. Yeah, that's great. And yeah, I mean, the ultimate protector is God, and sometimes we go, yeah, but I need, you know, and that's normal. We're humans, we're sinful, we're going to make mistakes, and we're going to try. Fear leads to control. I want to show y'all something sometime that helps me help clients, and it helps me help me, where fear is going to lead to control, and control is going to lead to controlling behaviors. And the controlling behaviors, the worry and the obsessions, the you know, checking the emails and all the things, you know, this worry, this fear, as if I can control my fear, and then that usually accomplishes the opposite of what you fear. In other words, it almost is self-fulfilling in the sense that I fear, I've told y'all the example, let's say one of your children is gorgeous, male or female, and the goal is, you know, I kind of messed up when I was a kid, I'm going to make sure my child doesn't make that mistake, and so we overprotect them and don't let them date till they're like 90, you know, that kind of mentality. Or the guy comes in to pick up your daughter, and it's like, you know, there's a list. All right, son, so who are your parents? What do you know? So there's this overprotection, and so what do you think happens when they're 18 years old or they're in their car and now they're not under your watch? Of course, they go a little crazy sometimes because our fear led to control that snuffed out their part of their life, and they didn't learn how to deal with it on their own. So now they rebel, and some of them go crazy and try things, and now they're old enough to where the things they're trying now are much more harmful than the things they try at 9 and the things they try at 5. So allowing kids to grow up and experience fear and then walk with them through that and teach them, you know, maybe they're the last one picked on the team. I was the last one picked on a lot of teams. Nobody was there to go, my son, don't even go play football, son, because you're with those kids, you're going to be the last one picked. That would have not taught me how to deal with disappointment, so I just did drugs, and that's how I dealt with disappointment. But so I'd say there's probably a healthier way. This was as a child. This is not a little child. I mean, okay, I was 12. But anyway, so any other input? My wife is now gone somewhere. Son, husband, you've just lost your class, and you'll never teach here again. But anything else? Yeah. That's a great point. And what I really want to do is have another chart. I really want to expand this out to where we go, because the loneliness is, if I'm lonely because there aren't people around, and my God, who's literally died to have a relationship with me, and if I'm really lonely, I'm not reaching out to the one who loves me no matter what I do and accepts me no matter where I am. He actually died for me while I was still a sinner. So he now sees me as righteousness, and you're exactly right. I'm not lonely anymore. So the benefit of loneliness is going, Lord, I'm lonely from people, but I'm not lonely with you. Thank you for always being there, never leaving me and forsaking me. Thank you for saying that, because that's why I say these all are going to move. We either move towards God in these, or we move towards the flesh, which is never going to satisfy. It's going to move us away from people, and these hurts and these losses, or loneliness or sadness or fear, they begin to just, again, it's kind of like putting your arm behind your back. Before you know it, you don't really want to be in relationships because they hurt too bad, and I can't get hurt like that again. Or people keep dying. It's like, I get close to somebody that we're going to lose. But then there's your God, your Lord, your Savior, who's going, I'm enough for you. I meet all your needs. It's not that that's not sad. That is very sad, and let me walk with you even through that. So I appreciate you saying that. That's a very important point. And all of these, yes. I think they're a pair. I think most people, anger is kind of the manifestation of a lot of these. In other words, I give the example of my little dog Max, who's a sweet dog, but if you back him in a corner, he's going to bite. The bite is the anger, but what's really behind it is the fear. Okay, so he's afraid, so he bites. That's how he that's how he protects himself. That's how he lets you know this is not good. I don't like it here in the corner. And I don't do that very often anymore. It's not like every day. It's like about every 2 or 3 days, I want to remind him who's the man, who's the alpha dog in the family. I'm just kidding, for those of you that know Humane Society people. But I think you're right. I think shame and anger go hand in hand. I think fear and anger go hand in hand. I think shame usually goes to blame, and it also goes to anger. So there's a lot of them that are paired. I think guilt and shame go well together. There's two really happy dysfunctions. But yeah, I think you're right. I think they do go together. And I think anger, if I'm talking to a couple and I go, okay, pick a feeling, I know the first feeling. I just leave it on the sheet. It's anger. And I go, okay, and that's more of a secondary emotion, but it's a very real emotion. It's not like, oh, who cares about that? But what's under that usually is going to be hurt, fear, shame, guilt. Sadness can be there. It depends on the depth of the sadness and the depth of the loneliness, but I think you're right. And they come in threes and four. Fear might lead to shame, which leads to anger, which leads to guilt for being all alone. If I hadn't said this, I wouldn't be alone. So then before you know it, you've got a melting pot of junk, because we're going towards that toxicity part, as opposed to, as we move towards the benefit of that feeling and then move towards Christ, it pretty much stops there. If it's hurt, or if it's anger, I usually get alone and just say, Lord, help me reveal what's behind this anger, because I know anger is not all I am. It's just all I feel right now. And so when I get under that, if I'm moving towards Him, then we're going to stop pretty much there. And when I find out that, to me, it was a fear of abandonment or a fear of not mattering. And see, those are people, guys have a hard time saying that to fear. I think to me, it's extremely obvious now. I don't want to feel like I don't matter. So I'm afraid of that. So a lot of men just won't do things that they know that they might fail at, because that's another reminder of how worthless, or that I don't matter again. So they do run in packs, I think, and it gets jumbled up. But if I feel hurt and I move and I'm able to name the woundedness and begin healing and take it to God, it pretty much stays there. Now I'm in the healing process. Whereas if I stay on the flesh side, the flesh has got all kind of surprises for me. If I'll stay and go down that spiral, there's a lot more under there than just what started that cycle. Yeah. I think sadness, it depends. I think, do what? He stumped the band. It's like, I feel like Doc Severinsen on Tonight's Show. I think that's a great question. I don't know that I know the answer to it. I see it and I feel it when it's happening, but I think the fear of not mattering is under almost all of it. That's my personal opinion. I mean, if I boil it down deep enough, I'm afraid I am worthless, and I need to do everything I can to not let anybody see that or come close enough that can remind me of that worthlessness. So that's where a lot of arrogance comes from, and superiority complex is really usually, I won't say all the time, underneath all that is this deep fear of not belonging and not mattering, or deep abandonment issues. Again, not if I'd mattered, you'd have stayed. So I think the fear of really that the truth is that I don't matter. I think you're right. That's what I think is underneath it. But I think there's plenty of other things underneath it as well. But I think that's a good point. But it's, again, most people, even the word worthlessness, for some people, they just can't go that deep. It's just too exposing, and they don't know it. That's not a term that they're able to use in their everyday language. They've never heard that. So I kind of gently get them lower, if that makes sense, to where I don't care if they pick one of the 8 feelings off the chart. I say pick any feeling. Just let's start communicating about what you call it. And usually they'll say frustrated, which is not really a feeling, but it's an experience. I'm experiencing frustration. So to me, that's enough to get a session started. As I build trust, and over the weeks, then we can begin to go a little bit more deeper, and they know I'm not trying to hurt them, and that the trust relationship is there. But I do want them to eventually understand what's really underneath this. It depends on what we're doing, to be honest with you. Yes. I think the first step is to God, and to begin the healing process from the one who made you this way and that understands you more than anyone. But if it's your partner that has hurt you, or has said something to which you feel hurt and anger and fear and whatever, then you need to then go to them and reconcile. Otherwise, you've cut them out of the conflict, and now you and God are tight, and you and your wife, the conflict still exists, and the resentment is still there. And I hate to say that, but I'm not saying God's not enough. I just think in a marriage, there's 2 of you guys, and so if Teresa has hurt me, and I can go to God, and He can change my heart, and I can forgive her, I still need to go talk to her and just say, this was very hurtful for me. Now, I've had a changed heart, hopefully. That's what I'm hoping my talk with God and my time with Him is, to help me understand what my woundedness is, and for Him to be my balm, so that when I go to my wife and say, I'm struggling with something, is this a good time to talk? That I'm coming with invitation to talk, not, you know what, let me tell you how mad I am at you, and where I'm going to actually push her away, and she's going to most likely, I would get defensive if somebody did that to me. So the more invitational, but if I've got a changed heart and can talk about what I'm struggling with, not what you did wrong. I'm hurt, I'm struggling, I don't know what to do with this. I just want to tell you, when this happened last night, this is where I went. I went to a fear of abandonment, or a fear of whatever, or a hurt, or so. To me, that's important. But I think, so where do I go? I go to God. I try to go first to God, get some healing there, get in the scriptures and get some perspective, renew my mind, because my mind right now is whacked. It's all about protection, and it's all about accusations and accusing someone of doing this to me. I'm a victim. And so I need to get out of that victim mentality and take responsibility for it and name what I'm feeling. I mean, even naming of what you're feeling is very healing, because it's the first time that you've really had compassion for yourself in this particular incident and allowed yourself to say, I am hurt by this. That's healing in and of itself, instead of just blaming the other person. I'm wounded. That's honest, that's confessional, that's vulnerable. So if you can get in your relationships as we move down the road, where we can begin talking about what we feel, and it's a safe environment. Again, I don't let people do it until I know that it's going to be safe, and we talk about it. We start with some little bitty things, and I start watching, is there really safety, before we get into the more, kind of stuff. But when we get there, I'm going to do the best I can to make sure that the listener is not there to say, well, if you didn't do this, you wouldn't have felt so stupid, or that's stupid that you feel scared. That's grow up, pull up. I mean, I've seen these things. I've gone there too soon before. But the longer that you start working this, and they understand how important the safety is, then the men that normally won't talk will talk if it's safe. If it's not safe, they won't. They know how to shut down, and vice versa. Women the same way. That's a good question. All right, we're out of time. I'm going to stop where I am. this handout that I gave you, well, I gave you the benefits. If I've still got a few more of the situation charts. If you don't have it, it's online. It's on last week's lesson that's been posted, so you can get it there. I sent an email out. But I really, if you do 10 of these this week, it's not too many. I've had people come in with stacks of them. It's not too many because it's learning again this process. I really would love to move ahead. I'm going to wait till next time and show you more where the next step of this is going to be. So please do yourself a favor. If you want to understand the next big one, you want to get this down pretty well. Okay. Let me pray for us real quick. I'll let you guys go.